There's so much to be worried about. It's almost as if we would be better off not knowing what could go wrong, because once you understand what can go wrong, you'll subconsciously start taking very serious preventative measures and precautions that not only ensuring your own safety and well-being, but also the safety and well-being of your family as well. Say you have a CEO of a large corporation and he usually checks his emails around 5 o'clock in the morning. He's half asleep, not even concerned or thinking about the fact that, some of these emails could be phishing emails. Someone pretending to be a company that they're not to steal credentials. Boom, his entire company was infiltrated and he doesn't even know about it. Then he walks out of his penthouse down to his garage, to his car, and now he has to make sure there's nobody in the area listening for the frequency of his key fob while jamming his car to steal or access it at a later point. Then once he's leaving, he hits the garage door button, to close it. Now he has to make sure there's nobody listening to capture that frequency on 433 megahertz. So it's just ridiculous. These rolling codes have been broken for most of the models. Then he gets to his office, and as he's walking in, someone skims his back pocket, steals his credit card information and track information. It's never ending. It's never ending with the possibilities, the vulnerabilities. Anything remote, anything infrared like a remote control, anything RFID, access control badges, anything sub-gigahertz like a key fob or a driveway entrance gate. Essentially everything can be hacked. But getting into devices, let's start with the Flipper Zero, which looks like a little cereal box toy, but it's actually a very interesting tool that can be used to do many different things. Now this is just a proof of concept device, but once you start to add on your own little modifications, it can do some pretty interesting things, such as creating fake networks. Just for an example, if someone has one of these devices and they know what they're doing, they can actually use it to create fake networks in a public place like a Starbucks cafe or an airport, just for an example. And once people start to use those fake networks that are controlled by the attacker, their personal information can be compromised, such as the login credentials to their bank. They call it a man-in-the-middle attack. If I'm on the same network as you, I can essentially control the traffic as if I were the modem or the router. Say you want to go to bankofamerica.com, instead of your computer telling your router, you want to go to bankofamerica.com, you're telling my computer you want to go to bankofamerica.com, and I'm giving you what you think is a bankofamerica.com, which would be a DNS attack or DNS spoofing, right? But that's just one thing. That's just Wi-Fi networks. The Flipper can do so much more. For example, if you put an NRF24 on a Flipper Zero, maybe your roommate or your neighbor is using like a wireless mouse and keyboard, you could essentially control those devices with the Flipper Zero and send keystrokes faster than any human can type, and essentially use that to take over a computer without even having to see them or it. And all that can be done through a wall. Obviously, if you have a longer antenna, you can get much more range. Just a multitude of different things you can do. RFID, for example, I can copy the frequency of them. You can use it to gain access into different locations. Then you have NFC, which is credit cards and access points. It's honestly just insane. This isn't an ad or anything like that for the Flipper Zero. I will tell you, it's not the Flipper itself that is allowing users to be able to perform these functions. So if you think you can go out and buy a Flipper Zero and be able to perform all these different tasks, you're going to be highly disappointed. First off, you need custom firmware. Okay, and you also need to learn how to modify the device. You need to learn about GPIO, which is essentially anything that connects to the outside of the device, which will allow the Flipper to control it, be the controller for the device. You need to learn about the I button, which is a form of authentication. It uses little metal prongs on the back of the device as a key. Bad USB, which emulates keyboard, can type a couple thousand words per minute. 2FA, two-factor authentication. The Flipper can be used as a offline device to generate your two-factor without needing a device that's connected to the internet. And then there's hundreds of little sub-applications that can do a multitude of different things. For instance, signal jamming. And by the way, for anyone who's shocked or surprised by any of this, all of these things have been possible with various different devices and methods for decades. You've never been safe. But I want to talk about signal jamming for a second, because law enforcement in recent years have seen a huge increase in the number of home break-ins where the attackers were using a signal jammer, right? And these jammers can not only, jam a multitude of different frequencies, including cell signals, which most alarms do use to not only communicate with the central alarm system company, but also, alarm sensors and even police radios. And now these devices are becoming much more readily available to the public. More people are learning how to create their own signal jamming devices more than ever. More people are learning about these frequencies and how to use them to their own advantage. And not only that, or even just to be malicious. I once knew this guy, he had this little device with this very long antenna, and it could actually be used to receive aircraft signal. And there's nothing illegal about receiving. It's more transmitting where you kind of get yourself into a legal situation. But understand, guys, you want to be careful out there. It's a very scary world we live in. You never want to underestimate anyone or anything. If you watch my channel, chances are you're well informed or at least somewhat knowledgeable about crypto mining. And this isn't something I'm going to be explaining too much in detail because it could potentially still work today, but there was a method. I'm not going to explain the method. But what these guys were doing is they were infecting computers with malware. Now, malware comes in various different types and forms, but the type that I'm talking about is called remote access Trojan, which is essentially the equivalent of me standing right in front of your computer with full access. I can look through your webcam. I can control your mouse and keyboard. I can see your screen. Essentially anything I want without you even knowing that I'm there. And there was a small group of guys that were going around infecting tons and tons of computers, thousands of computers, and they were using the remote access Trojan functionality to be able to perform crypto mining on these systems, right? And at the time, it was just Bitcoin and Litecoin back then. But the interesting thing is that, they had quite a bit of computers infected and mining at all times. And one of the nice things they did, I guess you could say, is, when the computer was idle, it would use 100% of the processor and the graphics card to mine. And when turned on, it would only use about, 20% of the load. And the profits weren't just being sent to one guy. It's not just being sent to one account. It was being sent to a pool, a mining pool, which is essentially, multiple people mining together, and the rewards are split based on the contributions, right? So if you're contributing twice as much as the next person, you'll get twice as much profit, right? And the reason why all of this was, essentially had to stop overnight was because there was a situation where, something went wrong, had to change pools. Everything had to be updated across the board. Every single bot had to be updated with a new Bitcoin address. And they obviously still had access to be able to do that. However, some rather complicated people to work with wanted to buy access to these crypto mining bots. And the creators of all of this weren't okay with that. They knew if they had sold this methodology, potentially millions of people could be affected. And it's just not something that they really wanted to be participating in any more than they already had did, right? And it kind of worked out perfectly with another business venture that they had in mind, where they kind of just said, screw this, we're done. We're not taking the risk, because if they would have gotten caught with what they call botnet, if they would have got caught with this botnet, they would have done a long time in prison. It just wasn't worth it for these guys. These guys weren't your typical tough guys that could survive in prison. These were your most typical nerdy looking guys, very frail. They almost look like Alfred E. Newman.
Because their actions speak everything. How they move, what they think about. You can just look at a person and tell and read off of what they do. Like what the hell? Like, what do you know what I'm saying? Like, you can tell. It's not hard to tell. I can read right through a person. I can automatically know if they're going to be a failure instantly because of what they think about. And if they're not thinking about money or trying to get to their life to the next level, they're going to fail because, and if you watching me, you definitely got a chance because you're watching the right person.
Since you admitted to it, like in the past, does scamming come with a scale or can anybody do it?
Man, anybody can do that shit, bro. That shit ain't nothing. You could be 14, 15-year-olds doing that shit. Yeah. Probably checking 10, 20K a week. You know what I mean? Out that shit. That shit ain't nothing, bro. It's just finessing. Man, scamming is finesse. Everybody scams, bro. Like, it's legal scamming and illegal scamming, bro.